Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to bring you the Mistweaver Mythic Plus guide for all of the mastery needs that you may have. So, if you're not up to date with Mistweaver, this is also a great chance to catch up because they've received a ton of changes going into 8.3. While some of them are just baseline boosts to abilities that we know and love, like Renewing Mist and Vivify, the most important of them is the 2-second additional extension that Rising Mist has received as of 8.3. So, if you're not familiar with Rising Mist, for all your Rising Sun kicks, it extends the duration of your haunts now by 4 seconds. It was 2 seconds. So all of the haunts, whether it's Renewing, Enveloping, or, of course, Essence Font, all of them get extended across the board by 4 seconds every single time that you Rising Sun kick. So when we look specifically at Mythic Plus, here's some of the talents that we're going to be running with, and some of them are going to be familiar, but others are a bit more strange. Mist Wrap, of course, is just a no-brainer, because that in conjunction with Rising Mist that you see at the 100 tier, you will be able to get some huge extensions onto your Enveloping, making each cast, while expensive, a lot more sustainable mana-wise and a lot more powerful. Enveloping is one of your biggest heals whenever you're going through Mythic Plus, because it's very easy to set up Enveloping on a tank and maintain it on them throughout most of a pull. So as you're going through. We'll talk about this a bit more as we start getting into gameplay a bit later in the video, but Mist Wrap, certainly very strong. Tiger's Lust, by far and away, is the best option for you. Not only is it really helpful in Mythic Plus to be getting yourself out of roots or certain boss mechanics, as you might be able to get out of some mechanics that you'll see on Council of Captains in Freehold. Whenever you get the barrel thrown on one of your allies, you can Tiger's Lust them and then immediately break them out. It's also great to be able to use for other players, especially your tank, in case they need to kite. If they're a slow tank and you're in a necrotic week or a raging week, like what you see right here, it's especially helpful for them to be able to have a bit of an extra boost. Your 45 tier, there is a bit of competition onto this one. Mana Tea has some excellent uses, especially in high tyrannical dungeons where you're going to be having very grueling encounters and not going to be able to spend much time utilizing the other option that you see in Spirit of the Crane. Spirit of the Crane will be giving you mana back for all the Blackout kicks that you're getting from Teachings of the Monastery. What that means is that just hitting Blackout kick on cooldown isn't going to get you any mana. It's just the additional kicks that you generate by using your Tiger Palm. Now, this is selected because in many cases you're going to be able to have significant downtime to regen mana. Most boss fights, and again I say most, will allow you to have good downtime in between damage pulses, where you can really get a lot of damage in on that boss. But other fights, especially like a high tyrannical Galvatst in the Temple of Sephiroth, do not offer much downtime at all, and that's where you'll start using Mana Tea. And the 60 tier, Ring of Peace, come on, no-brainer, we know it. 75, Diffuse Magic's usually the way to go, but in case you start getting to, again, some big boss mechanics that are physical damage-based, like Tantrum out of Underrot, it can be especially helpful to have Dampen Harm. 90 tier, Statue is the way to go, and while its healing is not increased by Enveloping Mist, it's still an incredibly helpful tool, and just be able to set, forget, and start pounding into the tank. As I mentioned, Rising Mist is going to be replacing Focused Thunder, and it's mainly because Focused Thunder was okay, but really not that good. Rising Mist, incredibly high efficiency that you're able to generate, especially by using your Thunder Focus Teas for more kicks, allowing you to just buy more and more time to be able to extend those hots to allow you to further DPS. The ideal playstyle that you're going to be looking for in general is extending the duration of your passive healing so that you're able to do more damage. Now, when we start going into Azerite traits, it's important to know that there's a lot of options and there's a lot of different choices that you'll see people make. So, very important to go over it from a damage dealing perspective, because once you start feeling comfortable going through and doing enough healing to everybody, you want to start optimizing your damage. So you start having a couple options that Windwalkers also use. We have Sunrise Technique, Glory of the Dawn, and Dance of Chi-Ji. Now for some of these, like Dance of Chi-Ji, you need to spec into Windwalker in order to select it, and then spec back into Mistweaver, and it will still work, even though it is grayed out. Now, some of these are much better than others. When you're comparing these three across the board, Dance of Chi-Ji is usually very effective on fortified weeks, or if you're pulling like you're running the Mythic Dungeon International, right? Massive pulls where your spinning crane kick will get incredible value. Of course, you don't have great control over when it procs, because you can't really spend chi, so you're just waiting for that opportunity to get a proc to increase the damage that it deals. Good damage, inconsistent, maybe something you'd run in 4 to 5 weeks. Glory of the Dawn, however, is something that starts focusing more single target damage. Rising Sun Kick having a chance to trigger another kick. Now this extra kick from Glory of the Dawn does not trigger Rising Mist, otherwise it would be insane. So it's just its own damage, and it's pretty decent if you're able to constantly get damage out. But even with this high haste build, which encourages lots and lots of Rising Sun Kicks, it often isn't as valuable as the final one of these three, Sunrise Technique. Sunrise Technique is consistency. Every single time that you hit a Rising Sun Kick onto a target, you will be putting the debuff on them, leaving them more susceptible to additional damage. That means if you have your Thunder Focus T, for example, you hit Thunder Focus T, one Rising Sun Kick, a Tiger Palm, and then you Rising Sun Kick a different target, then whenever you have, a good pile of enemies, 2 or even hopefully 3 if you get a reset, could have the Sunrise Technique debuff on them, and they take even more damage whenever you start spinning. This is incredibly helpful for when you want to do AoE damage, but also want to funnel a bit more damage into specific targets. It's also really good on single target boss fights, and that's why whenever you're looking at these 3 options together, Sunrise Technique should be the one that you go for, because it is so much consistency onto that one. So those are for damage dealing. Then when you're looking at more heal focused or more stat focused, you have a couple options as well. Uplifted Spirits is just generally amazing for anything that you need in terms of playing more safe, more secure, because the additional Vivify buff that you receive affects every single target that's hit by Vivify, and that's really important on high Tyrannical weeks because of the fact that it means that you're able to more easily top off the entirety of the group, which is one area that we really struggled with previously because we couldn't get more than 3 Renewing Mists out at any one point in time, maybe 4 if we were lucky. So there was always 1 or 2 people who was just kind of left out in that healing, making our healing on Tyrannical boss fights a lot more inefficient and causing us to go much more rapidly. Heart of Darkness, if you have enough corruption, it's just generally a large amount of stats across the board. And while Mastery loses a bit of effectiveness, and we'll talk about that just a bit later, all of your stats, just general stat increases, are excellent. Misty Peaks as well, you're constantly going to be cycling Renewing Mists, so it's very likely you'll be getting even more haste procs, and that's always going to be a good thing. And finally, we have Secret Infusion. And while the goal of getting more haste, and as we start talking about stats in a moment, the goal for getting more haste is that you can get more Rising Sun Kicks. Unfortunately, whenever you use Secret Infusion, you're less likely to use it to get a haste proc. The value of getting that reduced cooldown on the Rising Sun Kick is just so high that, and versatility isn't a bad stat as it is, you might as well just go for the versatility, use your Rising Sun Kick, get a faster second kick, and a huge burst of versatility, which will help whether you're spinning, whether you're dealing single target damage, or whether you're trying to top off your allies. That'll usually be the way to go, and it gives you a useful buff along the way. So an ideal look that I've been running with, at least thus far, has been running with a mix of some of the damage, especially Sunrise Technique, but that's not available from any of the raid traits, so you're going to have to get that from some of the Mythic Plus vendors. Ideally, what you can do, though, is run with all Secret Infusion and Heart of Darkness, as that can be a pretty potent and heavy stat combination to run with together. Now, throughout this, I've been talking a lot about stats, and I wanted to go over that real quick as well. Whenever you're playing with Rising Mist, the goal is to continuously be getting more and more Rising Sun Kicks out to be able to further extend the duration of your HOTS so that you're going to be able to allow the passive healing of Renew, of Envelop, of Essence Font to do the brunt of the healing while you can then focus more on damage. As a result, Haste is going to be your absolute top priority to be able to get in this raid, even pursuing trinkets like the Black Dragon Scale or the Vita Charged Titan Shard to help you along the way and get even more in that stats. You can also be running with the Mount Trinket, which also scales with Haste, meaning that you can have a very powerful DPS cooldown to use, which also gives you quite a bit of mana back. Both the damage and the mana return scale with Haste, meaning you can do even more damage because you're having a haste proc on top of using that ability. Another thing to keep in mind is crit and versatility, as we talked about previously with Secret Infusion, are still very good. As they are buffing, again, your hots, they're buffing your damage, and it kind of leaves Mastery as that odd man out at the end. Mastery previously was our go-to and was our amazing button that or amazing stat that we would go for a lot in Mythic Plus, but because we're so much more focused now on passive healing, of enveloping, of Rem, it's a lot less valuable for us to go after our Mastery, because Mastery only ever triggers on the target that you're casting the ability on. So the initial application of enveloping, of renewing mist, of vivify, only that first target that you're hitting with it gets affected by Mastery. Now your healing is a lot more spread out across the board onto multiple allies, and you're trying to minimize the vivify cast that you do and allow your passive healing to do a lot more. As a result, Mastery, much less desirable for running keys. Now let's start talking about essences. As I'd mentioned previously, our goal is to allow our passive healing to do the brunt of the work for us, which allows us to be a lot more active with our damage. That means that we are actually much less reliant, I would say, on Way of the Crane to be able to do a bit of both. One of the biggest struggles Mistweaver has had throughout this expansion in 5-mans is to be able to deal damage while they're healing. They're always been excellent single target healers, but when you look at being more desirable for running Mythic Plus dungeons, they always very much struggled to deal damage and heal at the same time. So as a result, Way of the Crane in Season 3 became incredibly powerful and incredibly widely used because it did a bit of both. The problem is that it scales so heavily. And what I mean by that is, you often will see it if you look at a Mistweaver Monk in the Mythic Dungeon International or the Keystone Masters tournament coming up. They will have amazing value out of Way of the Crane because it just scales with the target cap, right? It becomes better and better if they're pulling massive amounts of trash together. Whenever you're pushing keys, whenever you're just looking to get your 10 to 15 or whatever done, and even when you go higher and higher and higher, you're not doing these massive pulls. In fact, you're just pulling 4 to 6 targets at a time, and Way of the Crane's okay for that, but it's nowhere near as powerful of a DPS cooldown as you would see in these mass pulling tournament environments. As a result, Way of the Crane has a couple flaws. It does a very poor job of supporting your tank, and it does a very poor job of supporting people who are standing out at range because it's based off proximity to you. So if your range target, for example, is at 20% HP, the melee and the other tank are sitting at 85, you're sitting at 99, it will choose to heal you first before it tries to heal that ranged target at 20% HP. Meaning, whenever you bring Way of the Crane into you with any tyrannical or hard to heal boss environments, or even in some split damage from trash, it just will not heal ranged targets, and you have to stop in the middle of Way of the Crane to be able to start healing them once again, splitting your focus and devaluing the cooldown. It's not to say that it's all bad, but it more means that Way of the Crane in this new environment is a lot more niche as a result. The Formless Void Major and even Crucible Major are excellent replacements to be able to use in that slot to be able to continuously be pumping out damage for you. Formless Void Major can be used to steal the essence of the Focusing Iris. Often you'll see Demon Hunters running that all the time for almost every dungeon, and as a result, you get your own beam to be able to use with a slightly higher cooldown than you'll see. But again, because there's a lot more downtime in keys and you're not always having massive large pulls, you'll most often have it just about every single time that there's a sufficient level of pulls. Crucible of Flame, on the other hand, still tried and true extra bits of damage, and I find it a lot better suited for a tyrannical environment where some of these boss fights in particular, whether you're in Workshop or King's Rest, some of these boss fights can really put your team to the test. So having some extra single target damage can be more valuable than just having more AoE than you'd see out of Formless Void. Using the Formless Void to steal something like Blood of the Enemy is okay, but Mistweaver Monk doesn't really have excellent burst single target damage, so it's a lot less valuable for us to be able to utilize in that case. As we go on into the minor essences, you often can have some good choices depending on how aggressive or how safe that you want to play. Devout Spirit is a tried and true minor to be able to run with, and unfortunately it does not cleave onto, the healing increase does not cleave onto every single ally that has Renewing Mist on them. That bonus is only for the primary target. It still does a ton to be able to quickly top that single target off and allow you to get back to doing damage. Lucid Miner often sees quite a bit of use, just that bit of mana return that you're getting over the course of the dungeon, and the versatility benefit has decent enough uptime. Can be pretty good. Like I said, if you need a bit more mana, if you're feeling like you're constantly having to drink, this can be a solid option. Formless Void Miner is also very, very good. It will be proccing, again, primary stat and haste whenever a major essence is used. And a lot of times, if you're running Crucible Major, you don't really need to worry about anybody else in the dungeons on use major essences. You're just able to maintain almost 100% uptime just by yourself by using Crucible of Flame. So another very good option there. Conflict and Strife with the minor slot, again, just giving you lots and lots of versatility, is always going to be an excellent choice. So you have a pretty well-rounded list to be able to choose whether or not you want to be opting for more damage, more healing, and whatnot. Overall, our essences do a very good job of, again, cranking out more haste, cranking out more stats for us to be able to take advantage of. So now we've gone over how you want to set up your character for success, whether it's been stats, trinkets, Azerites, or essences. Let's get down into the goodness of the playstyle. Now, as you're going throughout these dungeons, as I mentioned previously, passive healing is going to be king. So often whenever I'm going to look to go into a pull, I'm dropping statue, getting a quick soothing into the tank to activate the statue's healing, dropping and enveloping onto the tank as well while I'm soothing, and then immediately rolling in with Thunder Focus Tea to Rising Sun Kick a couple of targets. So usually I'll Rising Sun Kick one, spin, Rising Sun Kick another to make sure I get Mystic Touch on everybody, the Monk debuff on everybody, and then another Rising Sun Kick. And often whenever I'm running with Secret Infusion, with Sunrise Technique, I'm making sure that I'm targeting 2 different enemies to get the most benefit out of Sunrise Technique. One of the biggest areas you want to be focusing on is in between pulls or during downtime, keeping your Renewing Mists rolling and keep on using them, because you want to make sure that you're most well prepared whenever there's big damage that's going to be coming out. One of the most important things that you'll see is whenever you're in a bursting week, Grievous, or any other challenging dungeons that'll do a lot of group-wide damage, like you'd see out of like Wakecrest Manor, whether it's Tyrannical or Fortified. Either the trash deals tons of damage to your party, or when you're on Tyrannical, the bosses will as well. So while you're naturally dealing damage throughout the entirety of the run, you are going to be continuously extending the duration of all of your hots so that if one target starts taking a damage, you're jumping to heal them, but you're also topping everybody else off along the way. That means that you have to spend less time less time actively healing and more time actively doing damage. But it's also contingent on making sure that you're going for those resets. As I mentioned previously, with going with the Spirit of the Crane talent, you need to be relying on generating lots of teachings in the monastery to be able to get your mana regen going. And the reason why this can be really good is that most times trash doesn't all die at the same time. Even if you're in a bolstering week, or even if you're in a bursting week, trash usually doesn't die at the same time. You often will go from 4 to 6 mobs, and then you scale down to 1 or 2 very quickly. And that's where, when you're at 4 or 6, you're happy to start spinning away, and you're happy to continue dealing damage in a more AoE fashion. But then when those mobs start scaling down, that's when you're going to switch gears and start moving more and more towards using Blackout Kicks and Tiger Palms to start getting those Rising Sun Kick refreshes, and then also passively start getting mana back. So as a result of this, what I usually do is I build up my teachings of the monastery to 3. That way I get a full Blackout Kick as a result. This is going to be very helpful for getting, again, more mana back out of Spirit of the Crane, but it also gives you a bit of a bit of certainty as to when you're going to get your Rising Sun Kick, when it becomes more likely than not that you'll have a reset at that point. That can also help you start timing whenever you're going to be using your Thunder Focus Tea, because you want to be able to keep that rolling as often as you possibly can. But if you know that you're going to be able to get a reset fairly quickly, you can start timing that with your Enveloping Mist casts. So if you know, hey, I've already got 3 teachings in the monastery built up, let me refresh my enveloping mist on the tank if it's just about to fall off, and then I'll be able to use Thunder Focus Tea into the Rising Sun kick, into the Tiger Palm, into the Rising Sun kick, and then have a full 3 Blackout kick, and have a more likely than not chance to further extend your enveloping some more. That gives you a massive buffer window so that all of this extra healing is going into the tank, and you don't have to worry about them for an extended period of time, giving you a lot more room to start dealing damage. From a when to spin, when not to spin perspective, if I have 3 targets and at least 2 or 3 of them have Sunrise Technique, I'll usually spin. But if I don't have Sunrise Technique on them or something like that, usually I'll be waiting for 4+ targets. In many cases, whenever you have down to 2 or 3 targets, usually there's one primary enemy that should probably be brought down before a lot of others. So you might sacrifice a bit of damage here and there, but it's going to be more worth to get those hot extensions once again, get more resets on your Rising Sun kicks, and help bring that mob down more rapidly. A lot of mastering the fights, whether you're having to deal with high tyrannical bosses that are kicking your butt, or whether it's lots of fortified trash smashing your tank, it's built off the back of extending your Rising Sun kicks, and sometimes that means sacrificing your damage in some areas to make it so that you're better able to support the group. Start thinking about that, as the situations do vary. And if you guys have any questions on a specific boss fight, feel free to let me know. Be sure to check out the live stream as well, because I've been playing lots of Mistweaver lately, and I've been having a ton of fun. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe, check out the stream as well, and I'll catch y'all next time.